Using a previously built lunar lander model and a lunar landing site, we will now create a lunar lander animation of the lander landing on the surface. So to begin with, go to the File menu and open Recent. I'm going to open the lander. Well, let's open the lunar surface first. And now I'm going to append the lunar lander into the scene. And appending takes a copy of the object and puts it in your scene. So we'll do File, Append, and I'm going to navigate to the lander file and the object folder, and I'm going to select all the objects. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and multiple select the objects related to the lander. I'm not selecting the camera and the lamp, and then link or append. So over here there's a dialog menu where you can actually link the object, but we're just going to do a direct append. So we won't check that link box. And now you can see here that the lander has shown up in the scene, but it's not exactly on the surface, it's protruding below the surface. So I'm going to select with a right click the moon surface and turn on my translate manipulator and pull the moon down and just here move it until I could tell that the lander is actually touching the surface there. And now I'm going to move its position over so I get it more central, the lander more central in the landing site we've created. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save this file. I'm going to call my file Lunar Landing Animation and save as blend file. Okay, now in order to create the animation, what I want to do is move the lander up away from the lunar surface and then have it come down and touch the lunar surface. So this right here I can set as the finishing point, and I'm going to select the main body of the lander, and you can see over here in the outliner that's the object that is the parent of all the legs and the thrusters and such. So I'm going to have to think about how long I want this animation to take, and I'm going to just say it will take 3 seconds. And so let me look in my scene settings. Over here in the properties menu, I'm going to click on the camera, and my scene is set up to be an HD scene, 1920 by 1080. Let's see, I'm going to choose a preset here of HDV 720p. So there's a 1280 by 720. The frame rate is 24 frames a second. I'm going to choose 2997. It's roughly 30 frames a second. So a 3-second animation will take 90 frames. Down here in our timeline, this green line's at 0. I'm going to move this up to 90, and here I can adjust it 1 frame at a time. Move it up to 90, and I'm going to set a key right here. So a couple ways I can do that, but with the mouse in this area I'm going to press the I key, and that's the insert keyframe menu, and I'm going to insert the location, rotation, and scale are my options. I'm going to choose location and rotation. So I've set a key there, and as I move this you'll see there's a little line. So that's my landing point. Coming back to 0 here, or let's see, frame 1, I'm now going to turn on this record option. This is another way of keyframing, and I'm going to pull the lander up from the surface, and another key has been set. So if I left click and slide in the timeline, you can see that the lander is landing. Okay, So let's take another look at that. I'll bring this back to 0 and press the play arrow here. Okay, it looks like a nice soft landing. Let's take a look up here in the different screen settings at the animation screen and take a look at the curve that represents the rate of speed of the landing. And so what we can see here in the curve editor is that this curve changes slope gradually and then steeply and then gradually again. The gradual change is a slowing down or a slower rate of change, and the line here represents a consistent, slightly faster rate of change. What I want is I want the rate of change at the top to be consistent and then slow down at the end. So I'm going to grab this handle right here with a left click and pull this down so that that change is consistent right here and then it slows here at the end. So there's just a little bit of curve editing, and here's a dope sheet editor where you can change the keyframe position and move it in time. We won't be using that right now, but this dope sheet is useful for that. Now let me rewind this and let's hit play. Sorry, we'll pull that all the way back, or we can hit the back to beginning arrow here, hit play. Great, now let's set up our camera. Go ahead and stop that. I'm going to go back to the default view and set the view to camera. And as you'll see, as we slide the timeline, the rocket enters the camera frame, which is good. I'm going to right click on the camera and let's see, a couple of ways we can move the camera. I'm going to go ahead and come up to this plus sign up here. I'll say that's not what I wanted. This little textured area right here, and click and drag off a new window, and we'll go ahead and close that. Leave that in camera view, and over with the mouse in this area, press 7 on the number key and get a top view. Change the manipulator orientation to local, and now I can click on the blue arrow and pull that camera a little further away. Now I'd like to have the camera pointing at the lander as it descends, so let's go ahead and set up a track or a look at constraint. So we're going to, with the camera selected, click on the object constraints, and we're going to add a damped track constraint and make the target here the lander. And now we'll do the axis as Z, negative Z. And let's slightly adjust the influence. And that way it will sort of enter the frame and land. Alright, looks like a good setup. Now let's do a test render. We'll go here into the render settings, little camera. Need to choose a path. First of all, let's look at our frame size. It's 1280 by 720. Going to adjust the percentage down to 50% for the test render. And now we're going to set an output path down here. It's currently going to the temp directory. I'm going to select the desktop and the folder I have there, and I'm going to create a folder called test render by typing it in here, and that created a directory. And now we'll type in test render for the file name and click accept. And the file format, a PNG sequence. I'm going to choose a AVI JPEG, which is a Blender native format. And now, come up here, click the animation button. And it should be done in just a few frames. Actually have the animation set to run 250 frames, but this lander will have landed in 90 frames. So when it gets there, we'll hit the escape key. We're on frame 43 now. The lighting is something we'll need to address. Also want to add a fire particle effect to the thruster and add star fields and other things to our scene. But for this lesson, just actually setting up the animation, once we get this done, we will complete this session and continue to add to this scene in future sessions. And we're frame 72, 73, just about to make touchdown. And we're past frame 90, so we've made touchdown. So I'm going to hit the escape key. That will stop the rendering. So what we have now, we have a landing sequence, and I'm going to go to the Blender Sequence Video Editing Editor, and I'm going to add the movie. And we did that in the folder Test Render. I'm going to select the movie and add the movie. And scroll up here. Let's see, let's go ahead and move to 0 on the timeline. Right click on this movie and drag it. And now we can hit play, and we should see the movie preview in this window over here. And we'll also be doing some more work in a future lesson with the video editor, the Blender Sequence Editor. So there you have a simple animation of a lunar lander landing on a lunar surface.